Well, my computer has it at noon. We started recording and transcribing.
Patricia, you're muted.
No, it shouldn't be.
Oh, sorry, it was me. I was muted.
Okay, so first check. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I can.
Sue Jones, can I please have you turn off your video unless you want to be on the recording on YouTube? So, hello everyone. My name is Patricia Wyrick, and I am the Rural Forestry Program Coordinator for South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. We are very appreciative of all of our presenters who'll be speaking today and those who have chosen to send in information on their cost share or project assistance that's going to be available for landowners. We are focused more on timbered landowners, so there are other programs outside, but this is primarily for timbered or forested. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items that need to be discussed. Today's workshop will be recorded, and with recordings being placed on the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources YouTube channel for public viewing, once reviewed and approved by our DANR technical support team. DANR is an equal opportunity provider and wants to encourage participation. However, if you would not like to be part of the live recording, an email when the recordings are uploaded will be sent to everyone who is registered for this webinar. All microphones and videos have been turned off due to bandwidth concerns, and we request that they stay off during each presentation, but can be turned on to allow for questions. At the end of all presentations, I'll be turning off the recording for any additional questions that individuals may want to ask. All questions can be placed in the chat box, and/or please raise your hand to ask questions to minimize individuals talking over one another. Our agenda today will be to cover the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service, also known as the NRCS, South Dakota Conservation District grants, the United States Department of Agriculture Farm Service Agency, South Dakota Game Fish and Parks programs, South Dakota Department of Public Safety, Wildland Fire programs, South Dakota Family Forest Association programs, and the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources program. With that, the first presentation is of South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources Office by Justin. Please take it away.
All right, thank you, Patricia. Yes, my name is Justin Borboom, and I'm the Resource Unit Conservationist with NRCS. And basically what that means is that I supervise the offices in Bellpooch, Sturgis, Rapid City, and Wall. So we cover a pretty good chunk of the hills and work pretty extensively with forest landowners on different projects. Today I'm going to talk about, we have three main programs that we can use to do conservation work on forest land. The first program is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, more commonly referred to as EQIP. The second program is the Conservation Stewardship Program, and that's the acronym we use for that is CSP. And the last program is the Agriculture Conservation Easement Program, and that's called ASEP. So we'll get started talking a little bit about the individual programs, and we'll start with EQIP. So the way EQIP works, it's kind of an overarching program, and then there's several different fund pools within there. So we can do EQIP on every land use, but we specifically have some different fund pools that are available for doing work on forest land. But just as a kind of general overview of EQIP, we can do cost share. We can cost share practices with this program on private lands and public lands to address resource concerns. Just a quick example of what a resource concern is, that would be like a forest that's overpopulated and it's resulting in poor plant or poor tree health because of that. We can do there's a variety of different management and physical practices we can install through equip. And like I mentioned, the overall goal is to improve the health of the land and the forest on the lands. Within equip, we have some different fund pools, and I'll talk about the three fund pools we commonly use for being on forest lands. The first one is just, we refer to it as general equip. And this is, you can do all our normal forestry practices. The big difference with this is you would be competing against all land uses. So you might be competing against someone on your forest land that is doing something on rangeland or cropland or something like that. Sometimes it can be a little more difficult to get funded when you're competing against those bigger applications that are addressing multiple resource concerns across multiple land uses. We also have individual forestry equip fund pool for the Inflation Reduction Act, more commonly referred to as IRA. And we have a set of, or a bunch of money set aside to do eligible core practices like brush management, forest stand improvement, prescribed grazing. With this program, you have to sign up to do one of the core practices, and then we can do supporting practices with that. So as an example, say you came in and you're grazing your forest and you come in and you tell us, well, I want to thin my forest to increase grass production so I can increase grazing out there. So we would come in, we'd do our forest stand improvement. And then if you did a prescribed grazing with that, we could do pipelines and tanks to water that livestock because it's supporting prescribed grazing. But if you just came in and said, I want to do thinning and pipeline and tanks to water my livestock, we couldn't do the pipelines and tanks because they don't support any practice. And then the final funding pool that we have, we call it CIS. It's a conservation implementation strategy. And we had partners, specifically DANR, did a lot of work to get some special pools of money to do just forestry practices. And that would be, each project varies a little bit, but we have active projects in Custer, Meade, and Lawrence County where there's specific money set aside to work in a specific geographic area. Kind of the long and short of all this is, if it's equip is something you think you might be interested in, the best route is to go in and talk to your local NRCS office, and we can work with you to kind of figure out which fund pool is going to be best for you. And we can apply in multiple fund pools if they're appropriate. And then what would happen is we'd work with either our NRCS forester or with Patricia and her crew. We'd get you a forest management plan put together, which kind of outlines your goals for the contract and for your forest. And then we could apply the different practices that would fit in within that equip contract. Just a little bit of general equip information. With these contracts, they can be 1 to 10 years long, just depending on how you want to schedule things out. However, if you schedule all your practices in the first 5 years, when that last practice is done, the contract would be over after 5 years. Something else is with this, we pay cost share at a flat rate on this. And I apologize, I should have looked up the numbers before I started talking and I didn't. But just as an example, say you want to come in and do some brush management on your place, we have a flat rate of, I don't even know what the going rate is. We'll say $90 an acre just for this example. So you go out, the way it kind of works is you get your contract, you're funded, you're ready to go. You'd go out and you'd do that brush management, or you'd hire a contractor to do that brush management. They would write you a bill, and then we would come out, make sure it met our practice and standards, and then we would pay you that $90. It doesn't matter what it costs you to do that. You know, if you can find a contractor that's trying to get work and they're charging $50 an acre, you're gonna make $40 an acre on that. If your contractor is charging more, say they're charging $110 an acre, then it's gonna cost you $20 an acre out of pocket. So that's just kind of roughly how the cost share works with this program. The other nice part about EQIP is we can enroll one small part of your place into the program, or we can do your whole operation into the program. And that's where like the 10-year plan kind of comes, where we could schedule things, every other year just to give you a break on getting practices installed, or we can rush through it, or we can make that work for you. The goal of this is that, overall, we want to find out what your goals are with your place, what you're hoping to accomplish, and what concerns you have, and then set your plan up with you to make it work on your operation. So that's kind of, we don't have a lot of time to go into much more detail. So that's kind of the overarching of how EQIP works. And I guess it's up to you. I can stop now. If anybody has any questions, I could answer those quick before we move on to the next program. So I'll maybe just pause a second, and if someone wants to come online or type something in the chat, I can answer questions.
I don't see anything at the moment.
All right, well, I will move on to the next program then. And the next program that we commonly use, not quite as common as EQIP, but we still see some on forestry, is the Conservation Stewardship Program. Once again, that's referred to as CSP. This program, I'll be the first to admit, it can be pretty confusing and it's kind of hard to explain in a short amount of time, but I'll give it a try here today. And like I said, if you have questions, the best route would probably be go talk to your local office and they can go more in depth with you. But so we'll get started. And this program, what I always tell people, this is meant to bring your land up to the next level of conservation. So where this fits probably the best is like if you've already had an EQIP contract or some other cost share program, and you have your forest, it's really healthy, it's doing good, but you want to bring it to that next level. That's where CSP is a really good program. Kind of how it works is, so you'd come in, you'd sign up, and then we'd do an evaluation with you on how your land is currently managed and what resource concerns are currently out there. The way it works then is we will make we'll make a set of payments on how you're currently managing your place. And then the next thing we look at is what resource concerns are there and which ones you're going to address through your CSP contract. And then we'd make a set of payments based off of that. Kind of the nuts and bolts of it is that this is a 5-year contract. And if you max out the contract, we would pay $200,000 over 5 years. On smaller forestry operations, it's probably going to be pretty tough to max that contract out, but it is a possibility. The way this kind of works is like I said, we'll do that evaluation on how you're currently operating, and then we're going to make that payment. You'll keep operating that same way as long as you don't reduce your level of conservation any, we'll still pay at that level. Then there's the practices and what we call enhancements that can be installed with CSP. And so what a practice is that's kind of like we talked about earlier. We have forest stand improvement, fire breaks, brush management, pipelines, tanks, prescribed grazing, that sort of thing. And we could cost share any of those practices with CSP. And then there's what we call enhancements. And basically that's taking that practice and elevating it up a little bit and bringing it to that next level of conservation. So just as an example, we'll go back to, say your forest is overgrown and you want to thin it out a little bit. So we could sign you up under CSP for forest stand improvement. And then we could look at an enhancement, and that enhancement would kind of bring that forest stand improvement to the next level. And an example would be is we could include the enhancement to do roosting habitat for native forest dwelling bats. Or there's another enhancement where we can do hardwood and enhancements within the forest. And then that kind of boosts up that the cost share you'd receive for doing that, and it brings it above just a standard general forest stand improvement. So that's kind of CSP in a really big nutshell. Couple other things that go with it. This program's a little bit different. Like I mentioned, with EQIP, we can enroll small parts or your whole operation. CSP it's required that everything you own and operate is enrolled into the program. Like I mentioned, it's a 5-year long contract, and there's $200,000 max on that contract. After 5 years, we can do renewals, and we can try to get you a second contract to elevate the conservation and implement it even more. As I kind of mentioned, as a rule of thumb, EQIP pays better to install practices, but CSP is pretty lucrative and can do a lot of benefit, kind of as a follow-on to EQIP is how I would approach it if I was a landowner in the hills. So just because if you do all forest stand improvement, say with a CSP contract, it's probably going to pay about 25% of what EQIP would. So that's kind of how I approach the two programs. Something with both EQIP and CSP is that these are both working lands programs, and you maintain all management and control of the land. There's no public access requirements with the program. It's still your land, it's still in production. And as long as you're meeting the program requirements, that's the only requirements that go with it. So the other thing I like to mention with both EQIP and CSP is that they're both actually contracts under those programs. And where the reason this is important is because basically NRCS is agreeing to pay you X amount of dollars to implement X amount of conservation. There can be some consequences for not completing a contract where we try to be as flexible as possible on that, but there can be some consequences for not completing a contract. So that is what I have for EQIP and CSP. And the final program that I'll talk about today is the Agriculture Conservation Easement Program. And specifically within that, we have the agriculture land easements. And the purpose of this program is to prevent development of ag lands. It's pretty straightforward. And as the title of the program says, it is an actual easement that is a perpetual easement. All land uses are eligible to be enrolled in this program. I'll rephrase that. Crop range and forest lands are eligible to be enrolled in the program. The way it works is NRCS does not hold the easement on this land. What has to happen is that an eligible partner will apply for the easement. If the land is desirable and meets the program requirements, NRCS will cost share up to 50% of the market value of that land to purchase the easement. The actual partner you'd be working with would be the actual holder of the easement on that land. There can be, if the partner you decide to work with says that they can bring money to the table, there is an opportunity for more to receive a higher percentage of that market value, but NRCS's max amount is 50%. Conditions that apply to the easement may vary a little bit. As a rule of thumb, NRCS's only requirement is the land cannot be developed. And this would include building a house, shops, roads, or housing developments. Depending on the partner you bring with you, there might be additional restrictions that could be placed on the easement. I don't know, I'll just use this as an example and say that you're working with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and their big concern is leaving grass for elk to graze on. You know, they might require that you meet NRCS prescribed grazing as part of the easement restrictions. That's just an example of how a partner could put a restriction on the easement as well. The first step to this program is to find a partner who is interested in applying for the easement, because like I said, it's the actual partner that applies. Common examples of who could be an easement holder is Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wildlife Turkey Federation, South Dakota Land Ag Trust, Nature Conservancy, and actually tribal entities or government entities can hold leases as well. Something to keep in mind is that this is a voluntary program, and I'll be honest, it might not be a good fit for everyone. Somewhere where it might not fit is if there's a chance you want to develop some land, or you're going to have kids or grandkids that want to come back and build a house and put it on the land. That land should not be in an easement because it is a permanent easement with that property. One of the examples I've heard where it could be a very big benefit to put the land in an easement is, you know, say you're just outside of Spearfish and you're farming and have some forest and different practices like that, but due to the development around the area, the value of the land is skyrocketed. Well, if you put it in an easement, it loses its development potential. And so then that controls the price of the land a little bit, which could make it a little easier to pass it on to future generations. So that's one of the places I've heard where it could be a really big benefit for producers to enroll in a easement. So that is everything. I think I'm running a little over my time already, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions and see what we have. I see there's one in the chat, and I'll read that just for with the future people that might watch it on YouTube. The question is, what's the NRCS definition of forest land, i.e. minimum forested acres? Does a landowner need an FSA farm number for these programs? So I don't know off the top of my head what the official definition of what forested acres are. To me, if I go out there, I've seen some pretty open land or we've done some pretty open land that we'll do forestry practices on just to improve grazing, you know, kind of that stuff that's in the foothills and not truly forest, but it's close enough. So it's one of those things I can't specifically define it, but I know what it looks like, I guess. So as far as does the landowner need an FSA farm number for these programs? Yes, with all of these programs, you'll need to be signed up with FSA to have a farm number and be an eligible producer. And that's it's fairly simple to do. Usually takes about a half hour. You'll just need to bring in a copy of proof of ownership, whether that's a copy of your deed or something along those lines. FSA will establish a farm number for you, and they'll do adjusted gross income, which that's one of the requirements. And that's, I believe it's $950,000. You can't make over that in a 3-year average to be eligible for programs. Is there any other questions I can answer?
One comment, Justin, just for your other agencies can hold it. South Dakota Department of Game, Fish and Parks can hold things, but the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources Forestry Division can't hold something because there is another program that comes up every now and then that our department has, but it's very similar to NRCS for the fact that our office ends up not holding it. So just because there's a few people that work with our office, I'm going to throw that part in there. Definition of forest land under the USDA guidance. So the United States Department of Agriculture, which is the one that oversees Farm Service Agency, NRCS, and the Forest Service, including the state and private lands. The definition is private non-industrial forest land means rural commercial for purposes of programs, an individual, group, association, corporation, Indian tribe, or other legal party private entity owning non-industrial private forest land or who receives concurrence from landowners for making a claim to it. So with that, sorry.
And yeah, sorry,
you,
I see in the
Justin.
comments there, I speak in government shorthand. Yes, FSA is the Farm Service Agency, and they are our sister agency. So wherever your office is at, there will be a FSA office located with them. The exception to that would be Wall, but we don't have any forest staff or forest people that do that. So in Wall.
And with that, there is one program the United States Department of Ag and Farm Service Agency holds outside of the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and it is called the Emergency Forest Restoration Program. This is a program that provides payments to landowners to assist in emergency measures to restore their land damaged by a natural disaster. This is quite a process, and it is not just for a very small acre. We have to have the county declare the area as an area affected by a natural disaster. So there are quite a few steps behind it. But if a property is affected by a natural disaster, this is an option that might be available. It is to Participants may do it to do debris removal, such as damaged down trees, to establish new stand or provide natural regeneration, site preparations, planting materials, labor, replanting forest, restoration of forest land roads, fire lanes, fuel breaks, and erosion control measures, fencing, tree shelters, tree tubes, wildlife enhancement to provide cover openings and wildlife habitat. Natural disasters could include tornadoes, ice storms, and snowstorms. Some fire. Fire is if it is a deemed wildfire, and some other natural disasters. So another program that's available for people is the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. They did not have an individual that was available today, so they sent me information on their programs. They have three main programs that might be of interest to people who have forested lands. One is food plots that you could set up and they must remain unharvested or standing through March. This is different rates for non-public access or public access. They provide free food seed each spring, and the maximum acreage that they would like to do is 20 acres per quarter section. And that allows for individuals that I've been aware that have used this program have done like elk food plots in different areas. They also have the Woody Habitat program. It's to reimburse landowners for costs incurred on planting woody habitat. These are on areas that are degraded or need to have a woody habitat. Rates depend on public or no public access, as stated before. They want their plantings to have 8 rows wide and at least 1 acre inside. This includes like shelter belt planting, shelter belt renovations, riparian shrub clump plantings, or hardwood release programs. The final program that I'm aware of that they have is the brooder pollinator plots. They're designed to provide high perennial habitat for broods and pollinators. Individual plantings must be a minimum of 2 acres and a maximum of 9 acres. but the landowners are reimbursed 100% up to a maximum of 150 per acre for the cost of the seeds. So with that, there is the South Dakota Department of Public Safety Wildland Fire Program. They have a hazardous fuels reduction. This is in line with their urban interface program. They offer a 80% cost share in all of the counties located in the Black Hills. That would be Lawrence County, Meade County, Pennington, Custer, and Fall River. That can increase the survivability of your home within the Black Hills National Forest. They do have set prescriptions, and the purpose of those programs are to decrease the chance of a high severity wildfire. And they do have some varying acreage. Their average property or area project size that they look at is 10 acres, but if they are located in certain areas or very highly developed areas, they do some assessments on things. I know that. Right now, the South Dakota Wildland Fire Division has the counties split up. So Adam Fritz does Pennington County, Brittany Seidel does Meade or Pennington County, Jordan Harrington does Meade or Lawrence County, and Lane Austenlin does Custer or Fall River. As it says, they do a cost share rate of $1,200 per acre up to 10 acres, and it's 80% cost share with bids needing to be acquired prior to anything being started, and there's a contract process with that as well. So in the Black Hills, there are conservation districts, and there's the Conservation Commission funded grants. These grants come from South Dakota state legislation. So it is South Dakota dollars at work on South Dakota areas. Since some individuals don't know much about our conservation districts, I've added this in. Not all of the districts listed actually have programs. We're going to go over who actually does here in a minute that help forested landowners. But for the purpose of this workshop, there is the Butte Conservation District, the Custer County Conservation District, the East Pennington Conservation District, Elk Creek Conservation District, Fall River Conservation District, Lawrence County Conservation District, Pennington Conservation District, Oglala Lakota Conservation District, and the Tri-County Conservation District. They are governed out of Pierre through the Conservation Commission Board that's elected. So with that, we have a representative from the Custer Conservation District online, Mike Baldwin, if you want to turn off your mic or turn on your mic.
Yeah, I'm Mike Baldwin. I'm with the Custer County Conservation District. I'm the district manager. And we've had a resilient forest program dating back to about 2014, so about 10 years now. And after this year, we'll have roughly helped to fund approximately 1,000 acres of non-commercial thinning and brush removal. As Patricia mentioned, well, excuse me, most of our funding comes through the State Conservation Commission. We also have received some funding through USDA. Currently, we can offer payments up to $750 an acre for thinning. And if they also do slash disposal, we can pay up to an additional $150 per acre. The way it works, we work very closely with Patricia and other state foresters. When we have a landowner interested, we speak with the forester. They'll meet with the landowner and work on a prescription. Excuse me. Our board will review the application, and then if awarded, the landowner is free to proceed. They do not have to get bids, and they're free to hire whoever they would like to work with. Reimbursement is done after all work is completed and certified. So that was basically it. I don't know if you have any questions.
There is another rate for slash treatment. So there is additional funding available for that, but everything is based on a 50% cost share, which means the landowner has to pay upfront to be reimbursed at maximum, either the dollars that Mike stated or just 50% of the work.
Yeah, and if you're interested in this type of program, I encourage you to talk to your conservation district. They may not have any funding available at the time, but please talk to them so they can seek out funding through the Conservation Commission. They only award funding twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. So the sooner you talk to your district, the better, the more likely you are to get funding.
So with that, some of the other districts that have funding is currently the Lawrence Conservation District grant. It runs very similar to Mike Baldwin's program, but I will not state at what reimbursement rate that they're working on and the dollars right now, because I'm not entirely sure, and I'm sorry about that misinformation. But they do work based off of the conservation docket as set forth by peer in fiscal year 23, 24. I know some of the grants are held at both levels, so I'm not going to state how much those dockets are looked at. For more information, and if you would like to look up the dockets, you can go to the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resource Conservation Service. There is the dockets published on our website. The Pennington Conservation District does have a cost share grant as well. This covers actually Meade County as well as Pennington County. The reason why is there is a standing memorandum of agreement between Elk Creek Conservation District and Pennington Conservation District. It allows for a 50% cost share with a maximum of $750 per acre, which means a total cost of $1,500 per acre is estimated for reaching just for the thinning. Additional 50% cost share with a maximum of $150 or $300 total per acre is reached for slash disposal. The definition of slash disposal is doing projects other than lop and scatter, which is cutting the tree and going down. We have a question, Jerry, from minimum of 5 acres. So each district can set their own minimums and maximums. Most districts are requesting a minimum acreage of 5 acres. Each district is a little bit different on their maximum. Pennington Conservation District, for example, has a maximum of 20 acres that they will allocate to a landowner. And that is part, that is in their board's minutes. They made a decision about that many years ago. The rest of the districts have an unofficial acreage maximum. So they look at it on a case-by-case basis. At this time, Fall River County has a grant program at the low 2022 docket that will expire in June, and they have no intention of renewing that cost share grant at this time due to lack of interest. They had 0 applications in over 3 years. So if someone is not able to work through the NRCS program, please reach out and let people know. And we can work with the other districts on that, as Mike indicated. But at this time, unless someone believes that they could get a project completed by June 1st of 2024, there is no funding available through Fall River County. Any other questions on that stuff so far? Okay, well, sticking with the on-the-ground application theme, the South Dakota Family Forest Association currently has a forest thinning grant available. It mirrors the same one as the conservation districts, with one exemption. The only individuals that are available to participate in this program are South Dakota Family Forest Association current members. So they have to have a full membership, a full forest stewardship plan, and be in good standing to be considered for this program. Sadly, I do not know if they are working off of the 2023 or 2024 docket for the Conservation Commission, so I'm not going to state any of their dollars. And this program right here, the South Dakota Family Forest Association and their membership crosses all counties because it is dealing with their membership and is forest health concerns. So this also will allow for other forest health concerns if individuals are located outside of the Black Hills, but yet are facing forest health concerns and are a South Dakota Family Forest Association member. Now from on the ground to other options, the South Dakota Family Forest Association has a forest stewardship plan development grant. This is very similar to what Justin was mentioning on the forest management plan that the NRCS has for their EQIP programs or other programs, except from this is just development of a plan. I like to educate people that a forest stewardship plan is similar to a business plan. It's a 10-year plan with the addition of having looked at your resources and seen where you are today to be able to assess where you want to be in 10 years or less. It depends on what professional is writing the plan on how long the plan goes out. Currently, the South Dakota Family Forest Association cost share program does payments to landowners for hiring private professional foresters in order to create these plans. South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resource professionals will do forest stewardship plans for no cost to landowners down to a minimum of 10 acres. However, we are currently behind due to short staffing and other program needs. And so this is a great option to allow landowners to get forest stewardship plans done on a timely manner or at least in a time scale that they would like versus the unknown of being on our waiting lists. So with that, they require a minimum acreage of 40 forested acres to participate in the program. The cost share rate currently is set at $1,250 for the first 40 acres, $10 per acre for each additional acre, not to exceed 75% of the plan. And that is a mistype with a cap of $3,250 per plan. I apologize for that. They must become a paying member of South Dakota Family Forest Association. Every 5 years, they will be visited by a South Dakota Family Forest Association inspector. Then there is a South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources, Resource Conservation and Forestry Forest Stewardship Program. And we have something very similar, except from we go down to a minimum of 20 acres of forested land, but the landowner must hold a minimum of 40 acres total. So projects that this include is I might have 40 acres with a 10-acre meadow in the middle of it. And that's where the 20 acres of forest land with a minimum acres of 40 acres. The cost share rate will be $500 for the first 40 acres and $2.50 per additional acre, not to exceed 50% of the plan preparation cost with a cap of $1,500 per plan. It is placed on the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources, Resource Conservation and Forestry Monitoring System. This has the potential of being visited once every 5 years. However, it is not, it is by random selection. And so some properties may not be visited, or you might be visited multiple times. It just depends on the algorithm. So I put this line in here for some other general information. The South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources does maintain a plethora of other information on our websites, from an actual register of private professional foresters that end up working on the forest stewardship plans. We have a department that does regular forest health updates and webinars. There's a wood utilization page that includes a log finder website, which allows individuals to sell individual logs. It's meant to be connecting private landowners who may only have a few trees to sell to buyers that are on the small scale. Then there's also the voluntary, not verified forestry contractors list. It is primarily West River. There is a few that go all the way across the entire state, but right now most of our information is on West River focused. So with that, from the presentations today, we have contact information here that can be sent out to anyone who would like. The USDA NRCS, and they have the same offices as the Farm Service Agency. So it just depends on your extension option in order to talk to the NRCS or FSA, which is really great. These are currently the phone numbers. And Justin, if I am wrong that there is not an office in Custer County, please let me know. But I do know that Fall River office covers Custer County for FSA, and the NRCS is either located in the Fall River or Pennington County offices.
Yeah, that's correct. Producers in those in Custer County can decide to go to either Hot Springs or Rapid City, just depending on where they live at.
And then finally, there is the contact for the South Dakota Family Forest Association. I tried really hard to put everything on one page. However, everything was getting really small. So with that, I'm going to turn off the recording and thank you for participating. And then you can turn on your mics if you'd like to ask questions.